The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Detailed summary for students. Prologue. The chaos of innovation. Every generation believes it's living at the edge of change. But rarely do we stop to ask, what exactly is changing? In the heart of every city, behind flickering laptop screens and sleepless eyes, people chase an invisible dream. They call it the startup. Yet beneath the surface, most of those dreams collapse. 9 out of 10 never find their footing. Brilliant ideas vanish into silence, not because the founders were lazy, but because the system itself was flawed. Then came a man who refused to accept that failure was destiny. Eric Ries looked at the chaos and saw a pattern, a science hidden inside the madness of creation. He called it the Lean Startup. Chapter 1. The Myth of the Genius Founder. History loves heroes. We tell ourselves that Apple rose because of Steve Jobs' vision, that Tesla exists because Elon Musk dared to dream, that every success story is the product of one extraordinary mind. But the truth is quieter and far more useful. Behind every legend stands a series of experiments. Most of them failed. Jobs launched products that no one wanted. Musk burned through fortunes on rockets that exploded. Yet they learned faster than anyone else. That's the secret: learning. The traditional business world idolized efficiency. It believed that perfect planning produced perfect outcomes. Build a plan, raise capital, launch, and hope. But startups live in uncertainty. Their environment changes faster than any plan can keep up. Eric Ries understood this the hard way. At IMVU, his online avatar startup, months of coding and perfectionism ended in humiliation. The grand product launch, a masterpiece polished to shine, landed with a thud. No one cared. That failure became his revelation. It wasn't about bad luck. It was about bad learning. If IMVU had shipped sooner, tested earlier, and measured what truly mattered, it might have adapted before running out of time. So Ries asked a radical question. What if a startup could run like a science lab instead of a casino? Chapter 2. From Collapse to Revelation. The birth of a new method. The early 2000s were littered with digital corpses. .coms promising to change the world vanished overnight. Investors blamed markets. Founders blamed timing. But few blamed the process. At IMVU, Ries and his team were following the same script. Months of stealth development, focus groups, beta tests, press launches. Everything looked perfect until it didn't. When the product finally went live, the users who arrived were confused. They didn't understand why they needed a new chat platform. The servers barely handled the traffic. The carefully designed features solved problems no one actually had. It was a wake-up call. All their data came after the disaster. Ries began to think like an engineer running experiments. What if, instead of betting everything on a grand debut, they built tiny tests, minimum versions of the product, to see what users did? Not what they said. The result was immediate clarity. Users ignored the fancy avatar shop, but spent hours chatting through the simplest tools. So IMVU pivoted, cutting features, rebuilding around what worked. Within months, engagement tripled. The Lean Startup was born not in a boardroom, but in the wreckage of a failed launch. Its core idea was disarmingly simple. Build, measure, learn. Create a small experiment. Measure how real customers react. And learn whether to pivot or persevere. Failure was no longer shameful. It was data. In this new world, speed wasn't recklessness. It was survival. Chapter 3. The Science of Startups. Imagine running a startup like a scientific experiment. Every feature is a hypothesis. Every customer interaction is a data point. The goal isn't to be right. It's to find out what's true before time runs out. This idea echoed across the tech world. Instead of long business plans, founders began writing leap of faith assumptions. Who is our customer? What problem are we really solving? What behavior proves it? Eric Ries was inspired by two giants before him. From Toyota's lean manufacturing, he borrowed the focus on eliminating waste, the discipline of learning from the factory floor. And from Steve Blank's customer development, he took the idea that a startup's true mission is to discover its customers, not assume them. Together, these ideas formed a living system, part science, part philosophy. A startup is not just a smaller version of a big company. It's a search engine for a business model. Traditional companies execute known plans. Startups search for them. That difference changes everything. How teams work, how progress is measured, how leaders think. The lean startup approach redefined what success looked like. It was no longer about the perfect launch or the biggest funding round. It was about validated learning, evidence that you're moving closer to something people actually want. Early experiments proved the power of this method. Startups that released rough prototypes and measured real feedback outpaced competitors who waited for perfection. Some products grew from tiny tests into global phenomena. Dropbox, Airbnb, and Slack all owe their DNA to these principles. Behind each success lay the same truth. Learning faster than your competitors is the ultimate competitive advantage. And so, in the early 2010s, the lean startup spread like wildfire. From Silicon Valley garages to corporate boardrooms, from nonprofits to government labs. Eric Ries had done more than write a book. He'd sparked a movement that changed how the world innovates. Chapter 4. Build, measure, learn. The feedback loop. In the traditional world, companies plan, execute, and then evaluate. By the time results arrive, it's too late to change course. The lean startup flips that sequence on its head. It begins with building the smallest possible version of the idea, the minimum viable product. Then it measures how real customers behave. And finally, it learns what to do next. It sounds mechanical, but it's anything but. It's a rhythm, a heartbeat, pulsing through the life of a young company. Eric Ries compared it to driving a car. You don't plan every turn before you leave the garage. You steer, you adjust, you react to the road. A startup's road is uncertainty, and the steering wheel is data. At IMVU, the first prototype was crude, half-finished graphics, clunky menus, awkward navigation. But it was alive. Within hours, real users were inside, chatting, breaking things, exposing truths no spreadsheet could predict. One complained that the sign-up was confusing. Another loved the avatars, but hated the currency system. Each reaction was a gift, a clue in the map toward product-market fit. That's the magic of the build, measure, learn loop. You don't just release a product, you start a conversation. Big corporations waste months designing the perfect presentation for an audience that doesn't exist yet. Startups learn to launch ugly because ugly is fast. And fast means survival. Chapter 5. The power of small, minimum viable product. The phrase minimum viable product sounds humble, almost timid, but it's one of the most misunderstood ideas in modern business. An MVP isn't a half-finished mess. It's a focused experiment. It answers a single critical question: will anyone care enough to act? When Dropbox's founder, Drew Houston, needed proof that people wanted effortless file syncing, he didn't build servers or apps. He made a 2-minute video. It showed a fake product, and exploded with signups overnight. That was validation. For Zappos, the online shoe giant, the MVP was even simpler. Founder Nick Swimmerson photographed shoes for local stores and listed them online. When customers ordered, he bought the shoes himself and mailed them. No warehouse, no logistics, just proof that people would buy shoes without trying them on. The lesson: you learn more from 10 real customers than from 10,000 theories. A perfect plan can't predict human behavior, but a simple test can reveal it in hours. MVPs aren't cheap tricks, they're truth machines. They replace opinions with evidence, ego with insight. In every great startup story, there's a moment when the founder stops pretending to know and starts listening. That's the birth of reality. Chapter 6: Pivot, Persevere, or Perish. Learning is painful. Sometimes the data confirms your dream. Sometimes it tears it apart. That's when every founder faces the hardest decision. Do we persevere with what we have, or pivot to something new? A pivot isn't failure, it's evolution. It means you've learned enough to see a better direction. Twitter began as a podcasting platform called Audio. When Apple launched iTunes podcasts, Audio was doomed. But its founders noticed users loved posting short status updates. They pivoted and rewrote digital communication forever. Slack began as an internal chat tool for a failing video game company. Instagram started as a complicated app called Bourbon. Each pivot was born from listening, not guessing. Eric Ries calls this validated learning, discovering the truth about your business faster than your competitors. You test, you measure, you decide. Every iteration is a fork in the road. But the choice demands courage, because to pivot means admitting the old plan was wrong. And for founders raised to equate conviction with success, that's a brutal realization. Yet the alternative, blind persistence, kills companies quietly. They don't die because they run out of money. They die because they run out of learning. So the question isn't, are we winning? It's, are we learning fast enough to win? Chapter 7: The 5 Whys. Fixing the root, not the symptom. Every system breaks. Every launch stumbles. The difference between chaos and progress lies in what happens next. When something goes wrong, most companies ask, who's to blame? The lean startup asks, why did this happen? 5 times in a row. It's called the 5 Whys, a practice borrowed from Toyota's factories. The goal isn't punishment, it's discovery. Picture this. A server crashes during a product demo. Why? Because it overloaded. Why? Because the alert system failed. Why? Because no one configured it. Why? Because the onboarding guide skipped that step. Why? Because leadership never tested the guide with new hires. The real problem wasn't the crash. It was a culture that assumed knowledge instead of testing it. By tracing the chain of cause, you fix the system, not just the symptom. At Intuit, the company behind QuickBooks, a small oversight once caused chaos in their online banking feature. Instead of scapegoating engineers, they ran a 5 Whys session. The investigation revealed tangled approval chains and outdated training. The fix wasn't code, it was communication. Months later, product delays dropped by half. The 5 Whys transform every mistake into tuition. They teach humility and precision, the twin pillars of lasting innovation. Because in the end, progress doesn't come from avoiding failure. It comes from studying it until it teaches you something new. Chapter 8: Innovation Accounting. Measuring what matters. Numbers can lie. Startups drown in them. Page views, downloads, likes, funding rounds, a glittering sea of vanity metrics that say everything except the one thing that matters. Are we learning? Innovation accounting strips the illusion away. It replaces surface statistics with evidence of progress. Eric Ries divides the system into 3 stages. First, establish a baseline. What are customers doing now? Second, introduce one change, a feature, an ad, a price point. Third, measure what actually changed in behavior. That's the learning loop made visible. If your new feature doesn't move the metric that defines success, retention, engagement, revenue, it's noise. Kill it. Learn, adjust, test again. This discipline protects founders from their own optimism. Because enthusiasm is infinite, runway is not. Startups don't die from lack of ambition. They die from believing their own projections. When data becomes compass instead of decoration, teams can argue about truth, not opinions. That's the moment you cross from guessing to growing. Chapter 9: Scaling without breaking. What happens when the experiments start working? When customers flood in, investors call, and chaos becomes success? That's when the next trap appears. Growth magnifies everything, the good and the broken. Systems that worked for 10 people collapse at 100. Processes that felt nimble turn bureaucratic overnight. Ries compares scaling to corporate parkour. You need structure to move fast, but too much, and you can't move at all. Toyota mastered this balance decades ago. Any worker can stop the assembly line if something looked wrong. Slowing down saved time later. The same rule applies to startups. Pausing to fix a flaw prevents months of future disasters. Greg Wright at Intuit learned this rebuilding QuickBooks. After a flawless launch that customers hated, he scrapped waterfall planning and turned releases into 6-week experiments. Smaller teams, direct user tests, real-time feedback. Sales soared. His lesson: speed means nothing without direction. Direction means nothing without learning. Scaling isn't about doing more. It's about doing better repeatedly. Chapter 10: The 5 Whys in Culture. As companies grow, mistakes multiply. How leaders react determines whether those mistakes become scars or blueprints. Ries warns against what he calls the 5 blames, the corporate reflex to hunt culprits. Real learning demands curiosity, not courtroom drama. At one media giant, an engineer once crashed production during a Friday night deploy. Instead of punishment, the team dissected the event. Why the late deploy? Why no approval chain? Why no automated safety check? Within weeks, they installed guardrails, rewrote policies, and even celebrated Debug Fridays, pizza, laughter, shared war stories. Failure became folklore, fuel for resilience. The shift is subtle but profound, from fear to ownership, from silence to trust. That's how cultures evolve, from brittle to adaptive. Chapter 11: The Sandbox of Innovation. In giant corporations, creativity often suffocates under layers of approvals. To revive it, Ries proposes the innovation sandbox, a protected zone where small, cross-functional teams can test bold ideas on limited audiences. Within this sandbox, they control their destiny. Budget fixed, timeline short, metrics clear, failure cheap. Think of it as a mini startup inside the mothership. At Intuit, 5-person pods ran dozens of parallel experiments. New pricing, new features, new interfaces. Each test exposed real customer reactions without risking the core business. Results spoke louder than PowerPoints. Over time, these micro wins compounded into cultural transformation. Executives stopped fearing experimentation. because the sandbox contained the chaos. Freedom had structure. Structure had purpose. That's the paradox of lean. Discipline creates room for play. Chapter 12: The Long Game: Building Organizations That Last. Short-term thinking is the silent killer of innovation. Quarterly targets, investor calls, endless pressure to perform now, not build tomorrow. Ries imagines a different kind of capitalism, one measured by capacity for reinvention, not just profit. He points to the long-term stock exchange, a radical idea where companies report not only earnings, but the share of revenue from products launched in the past 5 years. Executives earn bonuses for patience, not panic. It's more than a financial system. It's a moral reset. Because progress isn't measured in quarters. It's measured in generations. A startup that learns fast may win today, but a company that teaches its people to learn forever, that's immortality. Chapter 13: Beyond the Startup: Humanity as the Laboratory. The lean startup isn't really about business. It's about how humans create under uncertainty. Ries often reflects on Frederick Taylor, the father of scientific management. Taylor wanted efficiency, but his methods turned people into machines. A century later, lean thinkers flipped the script. They placed people back at the center, their creativity, intuition, and courage. We've perfected the art of doing things efficiently. Now we must learn to do the right things. We live in an age where technology can build anything. The question is no longer can we, but should we? Every startup, every idea, every product is an experiment with the future, and the results belong to all of us. Epilogue: The End of Luck. Once, entrepreneurship was seen as gambling. You bet your fortune, rolled the dice, and prayed for success. But science changed that. Now, creation can be learned, tested, and improved. The lean startup gave humanity a language for progress, one built on humility, curiosity, and courage. It taught us that success isn't a miracle. It's a process. To build, to measure, to learn, and to never stop doing all three.